welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're just going to give it 2 minutes, just to allow those who are joining us online to connect. So we'll just get started in a couple of minutes.
Oh, thank goodness. That would have been an auspicious start.
Absolutely. So just another couple of seconds. All good. Good evening. I am Gillian Watt. I'm Director of Glasgow Caledonian University's Foundation, Alumni and Events Department. I'm just going to take you through some housekeeping before we get started this evening. We're joined this evening by a small in-person audience here at our GCU London campus, but we've also got around 300 students, graduates and staff who are joining us online. Following the masterclass, there'll be a Q&A session. We've had a large number of pre-submitted questions, but there will still be a chance to put your questions to our guest speaker this evening. If you're here on campus, if you just raise your hand, we would ask that you wait for the microphone to come to you, just as that will allow our online audience to hear your question. For those joining us online, if you use the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen, we'll use the chat functionality for more general comments and feedback on the session. This evening's masterclass is being recorded, so it will be available on the university's YouTube channel in the next coming days. I'll now invite our Principal and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Pamela Gillies, to officially open the masterclass this evening.
Thank you so much, Gillian, and welcome everybody to Glasgow Caledonian University's London campus to this very special masterclass. Welcome those who are here in person and also the many people online. And it's my huge privilege and pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, the wonderful and fabulous Dr. Tessa Hartmann, CBE. You're all in for a very rare treat because Tessa is a very, very special person. Tessa's a brand strategist and creative communications consultant, a regular media commentator across broadcast and print, and much, much more. Tessa has an impressive 24 years, you'd never tell it to look at her, 24 years of luxury brand marketing experience. And this evening she will talk about her exceptional career journey, touching on the many successes as well, I'm sure, on some of the challenges that she's faced along the way. But first, a little more about Tessa. She was born and raised in Glasgow, supported and encouraged by her family, and as a pupil of the High School of Glasgow, her love of fashion started at a very early age. Always known amongst her peers for her standout signature wardrobe, Tessa cites her fashion-conscious mother, also Tessa, as being a source of very early inspiration, and her father, John, as being a constant source of career advice and support. As a teenager, Tessa explored all aspects of fashion, including the sociology of style and the ethics of the fashion trade. However, her passion was for advertising, and despite opportunities to become a fashion model, she chose to focus on the business of fashion. In 1995, Tessa established Hartmann Media, the first ever fashion and lifestyle communications agency in Scotland, which has launched a host of fashion and luxury brands into the Scottish market. Brands such as Louis Vuitton, Mercedes-Benz and Ralph Lauren, to name but a few. But perhaps Tessa is best known as the founder of the Scottish Fashion Awards, an event which has rapidly grown in stature and is now one of the highest profile fashion and style events in the whole of Europe, attracting international media from around the world. She was justly awarded a CBE by the Queen in 2016. More recently, and given her love for the Isle of Jersey, Tessa founded the Jersey Style Awards and also featured in 2 seasons of the arguably controversial, but I promise you, hugely entertaining reality TV show, The Real Housewives of Jersey. And in amongst all of this, she has found time to launch her new sustainable wearable art swimwear, HeartSwim. You're going to get the inside story on all of these achievements, and it's going to open your eyes. A proud Scot, Tessa is quite simply a powerhouse who builds meaningful partnerships, seeking to provide opportunities to individuals and to businesses where she can, and she shares our values as the University for the Common Good. In 2012, we were absolutely thrilled when Tessa accepted an honorary doctorate from the university in recognition of her many achievements. And we are extremely grateful to you, Tessa, for everything you do for our university and our students. And we're thrilled to have us here with you this evening and with your family members. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce the stylish businesswoman extraordinaire, mentor and friend to many, many, and to me, to deliver this evening's masterclass, Dr. Tessa Hartmann.
Well, thank you, Professor Gillis. I'm not sure where I go after that CV. That sounded good. But listen, thank you so much for joining me here this evening. I think the ones at home are probably a wee bit luckier. I feel like I should have a gin and tonic by my side to keep me going, but never mind. Thank you for joining us. And what an honour it is to be part of the British School of Fashion, Glasgow Caledonian University. And as Pamela said, let me just go straight into it. My dad always called me a rookie. I think that was part of being Glaswegian born and bred. And my parents were very much, as Pamela said, my mentors. My father came from a very working class, poor background in Glasgow, outside toilet, the whole story. So he built a great business. He worked as a plumber, then he worked in the shipyards, and he became a stockholder of steel. And I think it was his tenacity and ambition that gave me the drive that I had. He was very much, because he left school at 14 and he didn't have an education himself, he was very much of the opinion that I should go to study at university. And at the time, if I'm honest with you, it wasn't really on my agenda. I was very much into drama. I went to the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama for years as a teenager. But then, lo and behold, I actually got some really good grades. So I decided, you know what, I'll have a crack at this. So I went to University of Stirling to study marketing and business law. And part of that reason, the choice was just simply because it lived close to my parents. At the same time, my parents were very heavily involved in the Variety Club of Great Britain. And so my father said to me, you know, you should really start doing things and raising money for charity. So that's where my first kind of insight to event management came along. And I started doing club nights for teenagers to raise money for Variety Club Scottish Committee. And they grew, and then I'd do club nights, and then I started to do fashion shows. And I realised that I really had a love for organisation and management. And I thought, well, you know, maybe this is something that I could actually, you know, do as a career. At university, the Special Olympic Games came to Glasgow in 1990, and they put an advert out in the paper for interns, and I thought this would be a great experience. So I wrote to them, applied, got the job. There was no payment involved in those days. I was just so grateful to have the role. And I went to work for them this summer, and it's run by the Kennedy Foundation, the Kennedy family, who are based out of Washington, D.C. And I worked for this incredible lady who was a marketing director, US-based. And the chap that I was working for in Glasgow actually got ill. And so by chance or fortitude, she said to me, actually, Tessa, you've been here a month now, but we need somebody full-time, so if we pay you, can you work 7 days a week for 3 months? I was like, wow, yes, absolutely. I was 19, a bit of cash in the summer, it was great. So that was a real eye-opener for me because, you know, it introduced me at university, the work ethic of the Americans. And that experience in Glasgow at that time, I literally went from donut runs, photocopying, whatever needed to be done, to actually, as the weeks went on, to planning the opening ceremony games, to working with different celebrities. One day, Eunice Shriver actually lost her Carmen rollers, believe it or not, ridiculous story. It's a Sunday in Glasgow back in the 90s. And I flew back home and I stole my mum's and I gave them to her. And it's a ridiculous little thing, but actually I saved the Women's Day because she was going to the opening ceremony. She suddenly could do her hair and I was a hero all over a pair of Carmen rollers. So that was great. And then at the end of that experience, the director said to me, we're doing our World Games in Washington and Minneapolis next year. Would you like to come and work for us as an intern in America? I thought, wow, this is a great experience. So I went over to the States, I did that, and at the time at university I was kind of swayed into, I need to start looking for proper jobs, so I thought I would go down the stockbroking route. So I went through the milk round and got an opportunity, got a job in a stockbroking firm in London. I was desperate to work in London. I needed something that would pay. And then came the sliding doors moment. I told my parents, I've got this job, I can look after myself in London. And I got a call from Victoria. She said, look, I know you're about to graduate and you're going to London. She said, but we're about to give our account, our marketing and advertising account to an American agency in London. Would you like to go for an interview? But the interview was on the Monday, the same day I was starting my new job. And I thought, oh my God, what do I do? Is that, do I go for the interview, don't get the job? Do I not turn up my first day and get sacked before I'm even started? And normally I would discuss everything with my parents, but I was too scared. So I thought, I'm just going to have to wing it. So I didn't tell them. I pulled a sickie on my first day, which was really appalling. Went for the interview and got the job. And that was the real sliding doors moment. So when I think back at that, what would my life have been? Did I really know what was there for me? You think you go down a particular path and then you realize actually the universe has perhaps got different opportunities for you. And that was the start of my proper, what I call my event marketing, branding and PR experience. The agency I worked for was fantastic. I then was headhunted and worked for another American ad agency, and they specialised in FMCG sector. And that is a really important lesson, and I keep saying this to my kids, is about learning your craft. One of the most important things that agency taught me was they put you into every department. I thought, I've got a degree, I'm quite cool, I've got good experience, I should be, going up the ranks, but no. They started you at the bottom. You had to work as a print assistant, you had to work as a media buyer, you had to work as a junior in the account team. And actually, it was the best experience I ever had, because the knowledge I picked up in the graphic design department and all the different departments, before they would even allow me to sit in an account management team, which I moaned at the time, but really made out, who I was. And also London was great. I was living in London and my passion was always fashion. And so I was still doing these little gigs on the side for young designers. And I'm not a creative, I'm not a designer, but I'm enthralled by the creativity that these guys have. And so my thought was, to get into that world, I can help them build their brands, I can do PR and I can do that. And so that's what I actually started doing. At night time, I thought I was doing PR jobs or organising little fashion shows, just kind of learning my trade and getting to, the vibrancy of what's available, and the talent in London and in the UK is incredible. And then I got my first invitation. I thought this was going to be my break. And there was a young lady that I met, I did a lot of gigs with, and her father was very big in the retail trade. And she shall remain nameless, but she said, Tessa, look, I've been watching you for a while now, and I'm going to set up my own agency, and I'd like you to join the business, and we'll split it 50-50. I thought, wow, that she's very connected. Her father's in fashion, retail. This is my moment. And this is another one of those sliding doors moments, because what happened was she gave me the document. It was great. I went to meet her father. The only problem was my name wasn't going to be in the door. It was going to be her name, because her name was bigger. Now, my Glasgow ego at the time was a wee bit offended. So I thought, well, that's great. I might have 50% of the business, but no one's going to know. So all that hard work and effort that I put in. Now, whether that was the right or the wrong thing to do, or maybe my ego got in the way, but I politely declined. When I went home, and I said to my dad, and he called it the ego has landed. And I said to my father, what do I do? I said, I'm so offended. And he said, well, you should set up on your own here. Rather be a big fish in a little pond, and maybe one day you'll be competing with her. And that's actually what I did. So I thought, you're right, I will go home. And my father said to me, remember, Tess, it's going to take you at least 5 years before you make any money. And I thought, oh, come on, I've got a lot of experience now, I can do it more than that. He was right. In fact, it was probably longer. But I went to the local government and I got some grants called a Graduate into Business scheme. I got a business startup scheme. At university, I was very good at writing lengthy essays, as we are, and I applied for all these grants and I got them. And that's how I built my business. I decided at the time, Glasgow was very much, in the 90s, it was an industrial city, but they were doing a lot to really improve their position as a city with style, and they launched the campaign Scotland with Style, and they were trying to encourage lots of brands to come and relocate. In a sense, they were competing with Leeds and Manchester and all the different regions in the UK. And I thought, well, the one thing that London taught me was that you had to be, as Pamela said, a specialist. And at that point, the PR agencies and communicators in Glasgow, They were doing everything. You could go to them and work in pharmaceuticals and get them to do your PR, or you could work in agriculture. No one was specialising. But at that time in London and New York, you were a fashion specialist or you were a legal specialist. So I thought, I have to specialise. The problem was I didn't have any fashion accounts in Scotland to start. So because I had done FMCG, the lady that used to work at Burger King, which ironically I used to work on in the FMCG agency, called me up and said, I'm now working for Dunkin' Donuts and we're about to go huge in Scotland. We're going to launch a factory and we're going to open stores all across Scotland. Would you like to tender for the business? And of course, God, donuts, this is not Balenciaga, is it? It's just not there. But I thought I have to take it because I had salaries to pay and I had a business to run. So I do laugh every time I see a Dunkin' Donuts because I took the gig and I launched Dunkin' Donuts in Scotland, but that allowed me to inject enough money into the business to have at least another year under my belt to pay my salaries of my staff with a graduate scheme. And then I thought, right, okay, so I've got enough money, I can keep going. And people used to say to me, why is fashion so important to you? Why do you want your agency to specialise in fashion? And, I am a big reader. I love newspapers. I love reading. And people, I think particularly then, and sometimes now, and I don't need to tell anyone in this room because you're all experts in the business, but it really is a serious business, and people don't understand the unique DNA and the contribution that it has. And I think for speaking to universities and kids still at school, there are huge opportunities in the business of fashion that people are just not aware of, which places like this are very good at identifying. Apart from being the 4th biggest employer in the UK, the ancillary industries within fashion that contribute to the economy are huge. And people are not actually talking about those industries enough to encourage young people to want to work in. It's not just about a designer. As Pamela says, this is the business of fashion. And ironically, the first thing that everybody talks about when we're talking about the economy, and the first economic indicator is high street spend. And I twigged this quite early on because in Glasgow, BBC London and Sky News used to come to me because I'd started to build up some of the brands. Whenever they were doing the budget, whenever they were talking about the economy, they wanted me to talk about retail spend, high street spend. And I thought, there is the power of fashion, but we're not really discussing it as that. So then I thought, right, okay, I've got the business now, I need to knock the doors. And I knew from some friends in the industry that a lot of luxury brands were looking at Scotland as a location. And there was always a battle between Glasgow and Edinburgh. Glasgow had a lot of disposable income for its consumers. Edinburgh was more architecturally beautiful. The tourist industry fell there, So there was always this battle. But I realised the only way I'm going to know who's coming here is to knock everyone's door. So I literally prepared presentations, went down to London, knocked everyone's door. If they didn't see me, I called them again. If they didn't answer my calls, I sent them a letter writing in those days. I literally knocked until eventually they said, right, okay, we are opening a store. Give us your pitch. And that's how it grew. And I also say to people, there is nothing wrong with a knockback, People get so afraid, what if? I have lost count the amount of knockbacks I've had. But if you don't get up and keep going, then what's the point? And I think that's really important. And also, when you knock someone's door, you'd be amazed how the universe collides and other things happen. And then you realise when you're speaking to all the journalists, because at that point we had to fly up all the journalists from London to Scotland to write about the stores launching in Glasgow and bring up different celebrities and things. And then they name drop, did you hear that Swarovski's opening a store in Glasgow? Yes, I did. What's that name of the director again? And that's how it's done, and that's certainly how I did it. And it's hustling and knocking the door. And over time, we worked very hard to build our reputation as the specialist in Scotland, so that if somebody was coming to Scotland, they would think of us. We worked with Ralph Lauren, we launched Burberry in Edinburgh, we launched Furla, we launched Bulgari, we worked with Mercedes. And the one thing that I had at that point that was the cash cow for the business is a VIP database. And that was really essential for us to grow the business because, like everything now, it's now moved to influencers. But at the time, we knew that we could fill that with the right customer for the brands. And also the other thing that I think when I was writing this, it's really interesting, that slower is a grower. You know, I've got 4 children, and everybody, if you follow social media now, everybody thinks that things happen instantaneously. That, you know, you follow Instagram and you look at him and her and you think, wow, they're doing that. Why is it not happening to me? I've been working hard for a year and a half now. You know, in the music industry, someone's an overnight success after 10 years. You know, and that's what you have to consider. You know, people think that everything happens for instantaneously, and it doesn't. So every time we had any extra income, we would invest into the business, my husband and I. And so we invested into graphic design, we invested into tech and knowledge. And our ambition was always to be, at first when we started, it was just a PR agency, but we wanted to be a through-the-line agency because that's where my expertise was. And the amazing thing, being a hustler and a saleswoman and not being creative, my husband, who's in the audience tonight, was the creative director. So it was it meant we didn't have to pay anybody because he was there. So he was brilliant. He was an illustrator, an animator. We did radio commercials. We threw everything at it. And I think that the complementary personalities, because we were married and we're building this business and we had kids, and by God, there was some tough times, I'll tell you. But having the children along the way gave us a great sense of perspective, because all we had at that time was our children and the office. And actually, we were just committed to our dreams. We had big dreams. And the next story is a brilliant story, and I say failure is success because that's the mission that you have to go with. You know, actually taking that risk to do something is more important than what happens at the end. So we decided we had all this tech, we'd invested in the business. So Sasha created the UK's first virtual pop star. It was very early days, way before Lara Croft, okay? Just to give you some perspective. And so the next thing, you know, I pitched it to some jewellery brands, and we did, you know, an avatar wearing jewellery fashion. And I'm talking, I mean, that was in 2000, so that's a long time ago. They're doing NFTs now. But we really created this brand. She was called Tbabe. We got great press. We started rolling it out. Everyone was interested. The Duchess of York asked us to join our charity. We filmed that. It was great. Next thing you know, we get an article in the Hollywood Reporter in America saying, this Tbabe, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Great. Knock at the door of a Hollywood film producer called Gaylan Hurd. And at the time, she was married to James Cameron, the director of Titanic. And she had just produced Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then we got a call from Fox Studios, and they said, we're really interested in Tbabe. We'd like to make a series. So we're like, well, what do you do? Fox or Gaylan Hurd? We thought, this is us. We'll be living in Hollywood. It's all going to happen. We're off. And we decided to go with Gaylan Hurd. We did all these conference calls, and she was one of the few women Hollywood successful producers at the time, and I really took to her. And to cut a long story short, she took the option rights. She said, you're going to have to wait about a year, but we'll start working on a script, and we'll cast for it. What do you think of Charlize Theron as Tbabe? Okay. And so this went on for a year, and then she, you know, her team kept coming back, and they would send through scripts, and what do you think? And we were literally just saying yes to everything, because what did we know? And then one day we got a call from her office and said, Tessa, we've got some bad news. Al Pacino's just signed a deal to do a film which is very similar to our film, so that's it, it's over. Really? That's it? And this is what happens in the business of Hollywood, because if you don't get that story and that script out quickly enough, because we'd had so much press, other people got there quicker. Other people made that film before she did. So what does that actually teach me? Well, what actually happened, apart from being devastated, my husband and I, thinking that we were going to live in LA, that was over, we're still in Glasgow, what she actually did was the recognition that she gave us, because Sasha was creating custom tech at the time, custom coding, that the big boys from Silicon Valley came to us, Silicon Graphics, with the hardware and the software, and they said, we love what you're doing. And we think the technology that you are creating is great, but you need the power. We needed a render farm. We didn't have it. So with that door closing, we suddenly had a full-scale animation department in Glasgow with equipment and technology and software that we could never in a million years have afforded. So at that point, I thought, okay, there's Sasha. He can crack on building the animation business. I am going to crack on with the fashion industry, and one of the things I really wanted to do was create the Fashion Awards. And I think it's very important when you're building a business. The Fashion Awards was never a profit-making opportunity for me. What happened was I kept meeting all these incredible people in the business of fashion who were Scottish. Photographers, stylists, merchandisers, creators, everywhere, textile manufacturers. And it used to really bug me because, you know, I'd be down pitching stories to Harper's and Vogue and everything, and they'd always talk about the Brits and London as the epicentre, and that's great. And don't get me wrong, I am a unionist. But I just wanted a platform to showcase the incredible global talent that the Scots are producing to the rest of the world. And I knew that the only way to get it off the ground was a panel. And I knew that if I could get Alexandra Shulman to be the leader of my panel my debut year, I'd have a good crack. So I literally messaged her, called her office. I mean, it literally probably took about 10 months before they even acknowledged my calls. And then eventually I got a meeting. I thought, wow, this is it. This is my chance. So I went to see her in London. I told her the dream. I said, look, I want to create a conversation about fashion. I want to change the conversation from kilts and tartan and shortbread to world-class talent and showcase Scotland. And you need to help me do that. Will you be a judge? And I knew if I got her, then everyone else would come on board. Well, I have to say it took another 10 months. And then eventually I got the call. She's in. Whew, thank goodness for that. So we created the Fashion Awards, and, you know, it's probably one of my proudest achievements because literally it was private sector sponsored. Everybody tells you won't be able to do it. Why won't you be able to do it? Oh, Tessa, there isn't enough talent in Scotland. Really? You want to do a fashion event each year? There aren't enough Scots working in fashion? Because nobody knew. Nobody knew about Albert Watson in New York, who shot over 350 Vogue covers, who is Scottish. They don't know about the people running massive businesses like Ralph Lauren, the CFO, who is Scottish. And it was our job to actually showcase that. And the most interesting thing was, and actually probably the most depressing thing about creating legacy, is that it was all private sector sponsored. I couldn't get the Scottish Government to support it. I couldn't get the councils to support it. It was supported through the brands that I brought in, and the biggest supporter I had was Swarovski. And again, I had to go to Paris, and I pitched to her because I'd launched the stores in Glasgow. And I said, look, you need to help me create this brand. And she, at the time, Natalie Collin, who was a creative director, said, well, Tessa, I'm actually launching Swarovski Couture Ready to Wear. And it's going to be kind of bespoke, so it's not going to be available to buy, but we want to showcase it to the fashion industry. So if you can bring the fashion industry, I'll bring Swarovski, which was just a dream because we then put on the only show in Europe of Swarovski Ready to Wear at the Scottish Fashion Awards, which a lot of the London editors just couldn't believe because really by rights that should be happening in London. So, you know, thanks to Natalie Collin and Alexandra Shulman, I look back at some of these pictures and I think, wow, that is the legacy. You know, Sam McKnight, one of the best hairdressers in the world, you know, all these incredible people. And I think it's just about, you know, creating those opportunities, no matter how many times people tell you you can't do it, actually should just inspire you to do it. Because there's nothing nicer than actually, as I always say to my kids, ignore the noise. You know, it's my favourite expression in the house. Ignore the noise, because there's always people on the left and the right telling you, you can't do this, you can't do that, or she's doing it, but she's doing it better than you, or he's doing it, but he's got a bigger budget than you. So if you can actually crack on and ignore the noise, you'll go far. So our next venture, while I was doing all that, Sasha had created a short animated concept, and it was called Sir Billy. And it was a 3-minute trailer, and it was this great idea, and it was about a Highland vet. It was kind of at the time, our kids were young. We were literally sitting watching Thomas the Tank, Bob the Builder. That's all we did at home, didn't we? And so we thought, you know, we need a Scottish version of that. We need a Highland guy, you know. And so we created all that. And I said, well, you know, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to go? So I'd read in the papers, and I'd met a couple of functions, Sir David Murray, who was very good friends with Sir Sean Connery, and I thought, I'll write him a letter. So I wrote Sir David a letter, and I said, look, we're a tech firm. We've got this technology in Glasgow. We want to compete with the big boys in America, but we would really love to speak to Sean Connery. Do you think you could set up a meeting? Here's our storybook. Here's an outline script. And so he laughed, and he said, Matt, he actually phoned me, and he said, you guys have got some set of, He said, look, I tell you what I'll do. I will forward it to Shoshone. If Shoshone gets back to you, great. If he doesn't, I said, well, that's all I can ask. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So one Friday night, I'm standing in my kitchen, late from work, kids are running about, we're trying to feed them, and my mobile rings. Hello, is that Tessa? I won't do his accent because you never liked it, but he said, it's Sean here. Sorry, who? Yeah, it's Sean Connery. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm going to the kids, don't move. I'm like literally like paralyzed thinking he's on the phone from the Bahamas. I'm on my mobile, knowing my luck it's gonna crack out, isn't it? It's just gonna stop. So I'm like literally shaking. And suddenly when I get really nervous, my voice goes really high pitched. Yes, hello. Anyway, so he said to me, look, I've seen the treatment. I've seen the little video. We did a video. We sent across the video. He said, I'm coming to Edinburgh in a couple of weeks. Let's meet. By the way, well, my wife is an artist and she loves it. I was like, great. So we met Sir Sean in Edinburgh, and he said, look, there's no point of doing a short film. Let's cast for it. Let's pretend we're the big boys. Let's go out, raise some money, and let's try and put together a full-length feature. And I went home and I spoke to my dad, and my dad's like, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. So that was our next project. And, you know, it was 10 years of unbelievable hard work. You know, Sasha had a team based in Kilsyth outside Glasgow. We had to get animators from all over the world to come and live in Scotland. How do you entice them to come there? We storyboarded it, we wrote the script, you know, every part of it is a massive project. And just to give you an example, the maximum number of people we had in-house in terms of animators was probably about 65, 70. An average animated feature film in America, there's 500 people. So that's what you're competing against. But actually, I thought the best thing we could do was the talent. So we went out to market, and with Sean Connery's name, we got a fantastic cast. You know, we got Ford Kiernan, we got Greg Hempel, and then we got Patrick Doyle, who's an incredible Scottish composer who had already done lots of Disney films, lots of Kenneth Branagh's films, and he backed it. And we went to Budapest, and you know, my parents were there, and it was just absolutely brilliant. And then we thought, well, who do we get to actually sing the theme tune? The one and only. We've got Sean Connery. We need, you know, it's almost Bond-esque. We'll get Shirley Bassey. And again, you know, who would have thought? And this is the one thing that it's taught me. Never in a million years at the time did I actually think it would work, that I would get Sir Sean or I would get Shirley. But I was never embarrassed at trying because I thought they can only say no. I mean, that's the worst that can happen. So we sent, you know, Sasha wrote a song and we sent it to Shirley and she said, I'm in. And that was incredible. But what actually happened was we went to San Francisco Film Festival. And we got a standing ovation, and it was the best experience. I took the children. It was a wonderful experience. We were flying back to Glasgow the next day, and via London, and we arrived in Heathrow, and I got a call from a journalist friend of mine, and she said, Tessa, I'm so sorry about what happened. And of course, Sasha and I are still on a high. We'd had Shirley Bassey, we'd standing ovation. I said, what do you mean? What happened? I said, we're like, you know, we're rocking it. And she went, oh no, she said, we got a press release in through the wires last night that the film had bombed, that people had walked out, and Variety have written a review that's completely canned the film. And I said, well, how can that be? Because Variety weren't at the premiere, because only the people that get invitation to the launch night of the premiere were there. Our PR campaign was to send out tapes of the film once the premiere had shown. So I knew that they hadn't seen the film, but they wrote a review, which was, I mean, it just trashed everything we did. And a press release was sent out from America while we were in the air to all the international news agencies that the film had bombed. Now, there's a story for you. What can I say? Who was behind it? And I remember on the phone, and I phoned Sir Sean. I was crying. I was like, I don't know what to do. How do I compete? And he said to me, kid, because he called everyone kid. He said, kid, he said, welcome to the real world. He said, this is Hollywood. He said, the one thing I'll tell you, Tessa, he said, you and Sasha's project is brilliant. He said, and if they're coming for you now on this, you know you've got a good product. But that is the industry, and that's what happens. And that was a really, really difficult lesson to learn, because we had literally given everything to that film and that production. But you know what? What do? You got to pick yourself back up. I had 4 kids. We were hugely ambitious. And suddenly, actually, we had this network of people involved in the film. We had all the experience of producing it. We then thought, right, we need to get back on the horse. We've got this technology that's just produced a feature film, so we need to put it into sophisticated advertising campaigns. We need to just rethink. And we did. But that was a very sore lesson, I'll tell you. And then along came, in 2012, not long after it, an honorary doctorate. So that really perked me up. And I don't think Pamela's ever known at the time what a perk that was, having gone through, you know, the trauma of the film. And as I say, you know, that really was, you know, dreaming big is so important. And, you know, Fashion Awards was a huge success. Sir Billy was challenging. I don't regret any of it for a minute, because I think that from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's our job to motivate, it's our job to create, it's our job to get up and do it again. And then in 2015, well, my mother passed away in 2013. People always say to me, why did you move to Jersey? And I moved to Jersey because I had a bit of a hard time. My mother was my best friend. Both my obviously parents were. I found it really difficult. So we went to Jersey on a business meeting, thought this is a really nice place. Why don't we just try and open an office here? And it was that simple. And as soon as I got there, I thought, wow, you know, this is part of a British jurisdiction. It's got a big financial community. It's got a bit of a high street. But, you know, the tourist economy was huge. But the only thing people related Jersey to was a kind of tax avoidance and a financial centre. Not talking about the talent, not talking about the fact that it's the British Isles and what actually it contributes. So I decided to set up the Jersey Style Awards. And that was in 2017, so I thought this will be my moment. So, of course, again, which is another reason why life takes you on a journey, I phoned up Shirley Bassey and I said, I would love to give you an award. You know, we'll give you the Style Icon Award. Separate to that, we set up a series of awards for all the businesses in Jersey. So I had my razzmatazz factor. And then came a shocker. In the March, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Wow. And that is really one of those life-changing perspective moments. And you think, you know, what is this all about? You know, what am I doing? And suddenly you're faced with your own mortality. And suddenly your revenue streams and your employees and business and everything is just out the window. And you focus on your children. And for about a week, I was in a bit of a bad place. And both of my daughters, one of them in particular, the day I got the diagnosis was actually the anniversary of my mum's passing. And I remember getting upset. And my daughter, Talia, said to me, Mum, you just stop that crying. This happened on this particular day because she is there on your shoulder. And I actually thought, from the mouth of babes. So I picked myself up and I thought, I need to crack on. So I thought, I can't tell anyone. Because there was I trying to blow my own trumpet in Jersey, bringing the Jersey Style Awards. I can't take ill, I can't pull out. I've got all the sponsorship in place. I had a record number of businesses applying for the awards, which was fantastic. So I never told anybody, went through an operation. And my oncologist, I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but this is a true story. I said to the oncologist, so when do I have to start the chemo? He said, well, you have to start in June. I said, well, do you think I could start the week after Style Awards? Because, you know, I don't want my hair to fall or anything like that. He said, yes, that's fine. Anyway, second opinion from another oncologist said, no. He said, you need to start the week before. I went, that's not really working from a schedule. Anyway, I thought, you know, I have to do it. This is the advice. So I started the week before, thinking that's fine. I've only got a week to get through with this big event, and it was huge for Jersey. We had a private jet sponsor, we had Bentley cars sponsored, we had music acts flying in to perform, and all the engagement in social media for all the businesses and the tourist industry was fantastic. And I started my chemo like on the Monday. The event was on the Saturday. Took an allergic reaction to a steroid. Was in hospital for 4 days. My husband's going, you're not going to be able to make it. You're just going to have to delegate, and someone in your team's going to have to do it. I was like, don't be so ridiculous. I haven't even told Shirley. I can't not show up. So I literally showed up on the evening of the event, having just got out of hospital the day before. And the ironic thing was that the medication I was on made me look like I had a tan because it affected the melanin in my skin. And everyone kept saying to me, oh, Tessa, you look great, you've got a tan, have you been away? And really they had no clue that this was just a side effect of the chemotherapy. But again, I thought in my head, I just had to get over that Saturday night because I couldn't let these people down. And I did. And actually, I sneaked off home at 10:30. My husband dragged me away. He said, right, we're going now. And the funny thing was about trending and Instagram and everything. People said to me a couple of weeks later when they saw me, oh God, what time did you go home? About 2 o'clock in the morning? I saw you dancing at the dance floor. And you think, isn't that incredible how, the word of mouth gets about? But taking risks is just so important. And again, that was another risk. And I also say as well, going through something like that, because everybody goes through shocking periods in their life that they didn't even imagine they would go through, whether it's family or personal or an illness or whatever. If you have a brain diversion, if you can throw yourself into something you love, then that really helped. And so when I got through the other end of that, I thought, okay, well, I need to give something back. And my children were really young at the time, and I hated using the word cancer. And because it's so depressing, you say it and it's so depressing. So I nicknamed my new boob Barbara, because I love Barbra Streisand. And everybody laughed when I told them. And also it made it easier to talk to my kids. So, my youngest son at the time was 10 and Johnny was 13. So I said, look, talk about Barbara and don't talk about chemo. It's a spa day. Mum just has to go every few weeks for a little spa day, and that's how we're going to do it. And by changing that language and changing that conversation in the family, I can't tell you the difference it made, even for friends. Because if you have a friend that's going through that, you don't phone them up and go, how's your cancer? You just wouldn't say that. But you can phone them up and go, how's Barbara? Is she doing all right? Is she feeling okay this week? And that is the power of language. So we created Love Your Barbara. We're working on some really great projects at the moment. And our job really is just as a label to support the incredible charities that are already there. We don't want to be a charity. Our job is to support the charities. We're working with cancer research. We're working with the Pink Ribbon Foundation. And again, I threatened all my friends that if they didn't wear and share the T-shirt for charity, I'd never speak to them again. So that was Love Your Barbara. And the other thing I think about is my little graphics when I was putting all this together is ageism. We talk about it all the time in social media that when is too old? Are you too old to have any dreams? When do you give up? You shouldn't ever give up. When you go through something like that, I think it's really important that you realize A, how precious life is, but B, how it doesn't matter how old you are, that, you can dream big. And all of a sudden I got this call from a producer that said he was putting together a reality show in Jersey, and could they use all my footage from the Jersey Style Awards to ITV to try and sell in the programme? And I said, well, you can absolutely use all my footage, but what's in it for me? And at that point, I thought, I don't want to be in the show, but I had a lot of clients that would love to be in the show, and I thought this would be great for business. So I said, yep, here you go, take it all. And that was the Jersey Style, that was the Real Housewives. And it was incredible to think that just a couple of years earlier, you were re-examining the mortality of your life, and all of a sudden you're making a TV show. Look, you love it or hate it. Reality TV is you love it or hate it. I think for me, it was a business decision. It was a commercial decision. It was a great platform for everything we're doing. And so much so, during lockdown, my husband, who's been the creative for the business, started painting again. He'd painted all his life, but he started painting again. And they put it in the show, and I got a call from this American lady a couple of weeks later once it had aired, and she left me a voicemail in a really fantastic New York accent. Hey, Tessa, I've seen Sasha's art. Can you give me a call? And I thought, that's one of my Glasgow friends taking the mickey. And I couldn't put my finger on who it was at the time, but I thought, I know it's someone. I'm not phoning back. I'll give it another go. She left me another message. I thought, I'm going to get you. Is it Kay? No, is it? I thought, maybe it's Elaine. Then I got an email, this big long email, and sure enough, she was an art curator. And so I eventually got back to her, and I said, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. And I had to come clean. I said, look, I actually didn't believe it. And so she said, look, we're curating a show in the Saatchi Gallery in London, and we'd really like to exhibit Sasha's work. And I thought, there you go. He was 53. I was 52. Never in your wildest dreams would you imagine to get that luck. And as I've said before, we had lots of bad luck, but then you get these opportunities that are just little bits of good luck. And so at that point, my business head, my branding head came on, and I thought, we have all this art and we were producing it. I mean, he produces it in abundance, which is fantastic in our studio. And I thought, right, we need to be able to transfer this. How are we going to maximize and build a brand out of it? So I approached Andrew Martin and I said, look, we have all the graphics. They're acrylics on canvas. They're huge paintings. You know, it's very philosophical, very deep. It's talking about religion and the collective subconsciousness and all of that. But, you know, it's inspired by Italian tenebrism and pop art. And the pop art graphics were fun. So we did a deal with Andrew Martin, and Andrew Martin put the pop art onto chairs and onto cushions, which was great. And then I decided, actually, what I'd really love to do, I was just saying to Tim earlier, is create my own labels, because I have I don't need to be a designer because all the work is produced by Sasha. So I'll take all the graphics and I'll put them onto swimwear. And that was the start of another journey, which I know that the school do very well here on the education of sustainability. And that is really, for me, is where the future is. If we were going to do a label, we really had to create a brand that was fully transparent and fully sustainable, which isn't easy because a lot of people promise you things and in actual fact they don't deliver. So for us, it took about 18 months to find the fabric. We're using Reprieve. We sourced it. Their tech is great. It's made from recycled plastic bottles within 50 metres of areas that don't have recycling or a rubbish collection around in poorer countries. So they're reinvigorating that and producing fantastic materials that are not only used for sportswear now, but the tech is going so far as to produce kind of silks and nylons as well. And so Hearty Swim was born. And it's literally wearable art. And it's right at the start of our journey. But I have to tell you, I think that it's probably one of the most exciting things I've done, because for all the years, we've done the campaign for brands. We've handed it over just before it goes to market. We've never actually taken the brand all the way through ourselves. So that's been really exciting. And I also think with having 4 children, we have a major responsibility to play our part in what's happening to the planet now. And I think particularly as, you know, we're big in social media, when you follow, you know, consumer demographics and what people actually want, it's a big part of the equation, even in luxury branding. You know, people need to know the transparency of the business and the model and what you're actually doing to protect it. And, you know, there's no denying that the fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters out there. And it's not talked about enough because there's too much money to be made. And I think these are conversations that, you know, if you think about fashion is responsible for more annual carbon emissions than flights and the maritime shipping industries combined, that's a frightening stat. So it's our job. So where does that leave you? Well, you know, like I've said, you know, obviously I could probably talk till Christmas about everything we've done, the failures we've had, the successes we've had. I think the most important thing is for me is to actually love what you do, is to have a passion for it. And we genuinely love what we do. I hate that I can't draw. I love that Sasha is this incredible creative, this innovator, but we have so many ideas, and I think that you are your best advocate. And I think that if you can love what you do, that is happiness. And also doing what you love gives you a sense of freedom, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that. And what happens? What is the moral? Well, 50% of it is luck. But the other 50% is hard work and dedication, and you can survive on that 50. And if you keep going in that 50, you just have to hope that you will get that little bit of luck along the road. And you know what? It is scary. I mean, even now, I've got to be honest with you, launching Hearty Swim, I thought, gosh, you know what? This doesn't work. You know, I've got a good reputation. I've got a brand image, and I'm being totally honest. But the only thing I can do is commit myself to that journey, commit myself to my customers that I will be as transparent and as organised as I can with that brand, and to grow it in the best way I can. And also to rest in the knowledge, particularly after I've been through what I've been through, is if it doesn't work, you can start over again. And not a lot of people are willing to admit that. They think if it doesn't work, I have to walk away, it's over. But actually, there is no such thing as failure, because you learn from everything. You might not win the account, but you will learn from that experience. And I've been fortunate enough to meet so many incredible people along the way. And I was laughing about, I was talking to the girls earlier about work ethic, and I was pulling up all these pictures. I met Graham Black, an incredible Scottish designer who used to be the creative director for Giorgio Armani Black Label, incredible talent. Jonathan Saunders there. And then I found this picture. This is Tammy Kane, Christopher Kane's business partner. Incredible dynamic Scottish duo. And then I noticed my daughter behind her with a lanyard and a clipboard at age 9. And I thought, well, there is a lesson, I had her working on the red carpet at that age. But actually, it's been great because my kids have gone to, my mantra is to them, you need to be employable. And that's why institutions like GC and British School of Passion, I think, are brilliant, because they're not just giving you that education, they're giving you the real life experience. By having the lectures from the people that they have, their alumni, and the opportunities that they're giving you, it's the experience combined with the knowledge, that is it. And that made me laugh. So where are we? In the end, we only regret the chances we never took. And my husband and I's mantra is literally to have no regrets. We might not have won every fight, but by God, have we had a good ride doing it. Thank you very much.
Where to begin? Thanks so much for sharing your journey with us so far. Lots still to come, so we'll need to do a second masterclass in a few years to come. We've been inundated with questions. We could do a whole other hour, I think, to get through these, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. If you would like to ask a question in the audience, if you just raise your hands, and online if you use the Q&A functionality. But we'll kick off with students Morven and Hazel, who have asked how best to stand out in a job interview, particularly in a competitive, fiercely competitive industry. What would be your advice?
Gosh, that's a good one. I always say to people, authenticity is key, is to be your authentic self. Confidence is very difficult. You only get it over time, and I've certainly learned that. But when you're going for that interview, is to know that brand like the back of your hand. You really have to do homework. I've interviewed many graduates over the years who, when I ask them what it is we do in the areas we're interested in, they don't have that knowledge. And I also think is to try and do something a little bit quirky. One of the things that I forgot to mention, I was the fashion editor at large of the Herald, and I had a showbiz column at the Daily Express once, way back in the early days. And the only reason I got the job was because I was so desperate to work and kind of like to get to know the celebrities for my business. I thought I could be a writer. So I mocked up a page of OK magazine, wrote it, designed it, and knocked on the door of the editor in London and said, can I come and see you? Eventually, again, a couple of months later, he said yes. And I presented a page of editorial of how I would have done it. And he said, I'm going to give you a job. Can you write showbiz? I've never written showbiz in my life. And I said, oh, yes, absolutely, no problem. So I think it is that a bit of originality, a bit of clever thinking, and lots of homework. But also, if you don't get that job, you'll get the next one. So not to be defeated, it's like anything I keep saying to people, never be afraid of the knockbacks, because every interview you do, you gain more experience and understanding of what they're looking for.
Next up, we had Ashley, Catherine and Kimberly, who were students. Lots more asked this as well, actually. As a successful entrepreneur, charity advocate, reality star, wife, mother, the list goes on. How do you juggle it all, and how do you maintain like a high level of drive and passion for what you're doing?
I think it gets back to loving what you do. And I think the fact that I run the business with my husband and partner, I think if you didn't do that, we were very lucky. We both have that drive, and we both have complementary skills. And, we don't have a wide circle of friends. Our world is work and the family. And we've just committed to those dreams. And you've just got to keep going and hustling, like I think all Glaswegians are, aren't they?
Fantastic. I'm going to come to Julie to see if we've got an online question.
Yeah, there's a question here from Holly, and she says, you may have seen the TED Talks Gold Circle Understanding Your Why. I wanted to know, what is your why, Tessa, and what drives you to do what you do?
Gosh, that's a really good one. I think it was probably, I was such a big admirer of my father, a self-made man who'd really come from nothing. I had a great education, I had his support. You know, I had a million things that he didn't do, and I feel that I always wanted to show him that I could give back and thank him. He gave me a great education. You know, he was an incredible mentor. So for me, that drive came from having someone like him as my role model, and that is my why. And then also, I think because my husband and I are a team, we are the why. You know, it's our vision together, and if we fail, we fail together. If we succeed together. And I think it's all about what your children grow up with as well. So I grew up with a father was, you know, hustled his whole life, left school at 14, but made it. And so I kind of feel like I've got to keep going. I'm not quite there yet. As I was saying to Professor Gillis earlier, it's not done yet. A lot more still to do.
Thank you. We've got another question from Natalie. She says about mentioning in your presentation how difficult it is to make something fully sustainable. If somebody's trying to be sustainable, what would be your advice to them?
I think it's all knowledge. I think they have to look at the area they're going into. Where are their fabrics coming from? Do those fabrics have certification? You know, there's big conversations now about greenwashing out there. Brands know they have to be sustainable. They know they have to have that eco conversation. But what they also have to do is they have to take the consumer along the journey. They have to show the consumer a full transparency model of where the fabrics are coming from, what the finishing processes are, right down to, you know, I was telling Professor Gillis about the plastic bag we used to mail out, how difficult it was to actually find a plastic bag that was recycled, but certifiably recycled, because a lot of these people say they are and they're not. So therefore, as a brand, you have that ethical responsibility to, well, unless I can have that certified and approved, I can't tell my customers it's truly sustainable. So it's challenging, but it's coming, and I think it's progress, and I think we've all just got to do that homework and research, and get, you know, there is talk of the government about, you know, bringing in some laws to introduce about sustainability, and if you're going to promise the customer, you need to be able to justify it. I think there's good value in that. It's a different time.
Okay, thanks. I'll hand over.
Great. Graduate Clara asks, what is the best marketing or brand management podcast that you've listened to?
Do you know, I love Gary Vee. I just think Gary Vee, and the reason I love Gary Vee is I think he reminds me of like my Glaswegian dad. And I kind of keep saying to my kids, you know, you guys think Gary Vee's great and he is brilliant, but he's actually the dad of 1,000 people in Glasgow, because he's confident, he's all about go-getting, he's about never fear failure, you know, all the things I talked about, which I think is very much I think we Scots are very lucky. I know we've got lots of international students from all over the world at the British School of Fashion, but you know, the Scots, I think, by their vocation and where they're raised, i.e. out with the hub of London, you know, you always have to punch higher above your weight to try and get into the places that are the centres of excellence. And so I love Gary Vee, because Gary Vee gives you that motivation and self-belief that if you really want it, you can go and get it. And that's, I think, a very much part of our Scottish culture.
Fantastic. Well, I'll go and give that a listen, I'm sure. I am sorry to say we've only got time probably for one last question, so we definitely need to get you back, Tessa, because we've been inundated. But I think by far the most popular question that we've had, and there was loads of great advice in there, but if you could just choose one piece of advice for students leaving university today, what advice would that be?
I think don't fear failure. I think because, you know, there undoubtedly when you leave university and you're looking at what to do next, the fear is sometimes so overpowering, the what if. And I keep saying to my kids, there is no words as what if. If you fail, you fail, you need to move on. I think if you can get past that, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
If I don't get this job, I'll get the next one. It doesn't matter if I fail, I'll try again. Yep. Because, you know, you are your controller. And I think that your destiny is only in here. And I think if you can allow it, as like I said earlier, to cut out the noise and just bang on and never give up, then, you know, you live to tell the tale. And no regrets. Like I said, no regrets.
Absolutely. No, that came through very strongly. So thank you so much, Tessa. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us here at GCU London. It's been a real privilege to get to know you more, to meet your family, Sasha, Talia and Zach that have joined us as well. I think we could have a full Hartmann Masterclass series getting to know them today, so we'll bring that back as well. But yeah, the principal introduced you as a powerhouse, and I think we would all definitely agree with that. We've all taken something away, I'm sure, from your masterclass in terms of all the great advice that you've given. We'll all definitely be inspired to up our hustle, I think, so we'll be doing that. But, you know, it's came through very strongly that, you know, you set up the Fashion Awards and all your other work through what you do. You really champion new talent, supporting opportunities for the next generation, and we cannot thank you enough for what you do for us here at GCU in doing that. So always a pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Hartmann.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.